Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Thank you for tuning in to Only You Podcast. This is your boy Lo Jackson. This is a podcast where we'd like to talk about everyday situations, depression, anxieties. We like to talk about neuroplasticity. We like to talk about psychology. We like to talk about different types of books that may help and encourage someone to become somebody who they weren't yesterday. And maybe we will find somebody out there who enjoys these books and this podcast. And I have actually found about 5,000 people that seem to be liking everything they're hearing. So I appreciate your comments. I appreciate all the emails I'm getting. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you for always following me and sharing me and being a part of my life as much as I want to be a part of yours. And today I want to be doing The Mind and the Brain by Alfred Binet. And I am excited. This is my second season of the Only You podcast. Remember, I had told you that I want to try to do things that are going to help you, with coping skills, because a lot of people in the world lack coping skills for everyday situations, whether it be mental health, whether it be coping skills for anger, whether it be coping skills to try and get over a death in your family. There's a lot of different things out there that people need coping skills for, and I find this to be important because nobody's teaching kids or anybody else coping skills these days. And I mean, I shouldn't say nobody is. I mean, there are a handful of people out there, doctors, motivational speakers. You got Les Brown, Eric Thomas, you got Tony Robbins. Look at Tony Robbins. I mean, it's $5,000 a ticket to go see one of his shows. That dude's been around forever. I mean, Chris Farley wasn't joking around back in the 90s about Tony Robbins, being soft and calm and all this stuff, because Tony Robbins is a hit because Tony Robbins knows what he's talking about, because he is a life coach. He is somebody you can look up to, but he's not just talking about it. He's really actually putting it to work and being about it, and his actions speak way louder than his words. But, one thing that Tony Robbins taught me throughout this time was, you gotta up your standards. I came from a really poor family, but then again, I had a rich family too. So I got the best of both worlds, and that's why I am the way I am. People never really understand me, and they think I'm odd, but I had to learn to be transparent in my relationships, because at one time when I was a kid, I would be at the trailer park, and then 2 minutes later, I'd be across town in a mansion, sitting at a table with 8 people that was a very strict home. They weren't all about God. They actually suffered, most of them suffered from a lot of addictions. And a lot of them were military people in that family. And the other side of my family, they were all farmers and carpenters and electricians and stuff like that. So, I've had to learn to be the way I am and find coping skills to deal with certain people, because I had to learn how to impress not only my wealthier family, but also impress and be there for my poorer family. And at times it has caused me to have some serious strain in relationships. I have 9 sisters and 3 brothers, everybody. And if you don't think that that's a household full of personality ideas, mouths, and crazy, crazy personalities, oh, you have no idea. You get 11 kids together on a weekend, and all the girls want to be Hulk Hogan, and you're the youngest, hell, my dad couldn't keep a coffee table back then. And I ain't lying. That's the truth. And you guys, this is the Only You podcast. And today we're going to be doing The Mind and the Brain by Alfred Binet. And I find this book to be a 5-star review. You guys can go out and get this book on any of the platforms that I always tell you about. I try to stimulate your guys' minds. In this podcast today, I'm reading this book because I want to talk to you guys about the vagus nerve. And there's a lot to... The vagus nerve, vagus in Latin actually means wanderer or wandering. And It's the longest running nerve in your body. It's connected to every single major organ that you have, your lungs, your heart, your stomach. But a lot of times if you hear about the vagus nerve or its counterparts, because there's other vagus nerves, there's other parts of the vagus nerve system too, but you hear a lot about how the things you put in your mouth are medicine. And I only say that that is true just for the fact that, I've done a podcast on Bernard Jensen's Foods That Heal, in the past. And if you ever get a chance to read that book, Bernard Jensen was a stand-up guy. He was from California, but he did all the schooling here in Chicago. I find that to be true because the vagus nerve attaches the stomach to the brain, and the way you can stay vibrant all your life, and this is things that I've done. I've always exercised my vagus nerve all my life. So people are like, how can you have all these traumas, all these tragedies, all these sorrows, all this pain and all this sadness and still have that smile? How can you still wake up every day and get out of bed after, you did all that time in prison? How can you look forward to a new day, and stand up, take a step and repeat until you get to your goal? Because in reality, I'm able to do that because I've always, and other people are too, inmates do this stuff all the time just for the fact that they're interesting to study because they're locked away in a 6x9. They have no voice, no opinions, no nothing, And these people, they're not everybody, not all inmates, but some inmates learn to exercise their vagus nerve, throughout their sentence. And I've read about this, and the food you put in your mouth go into your stomach. And so if you're putting fatty O3 mega acids into your diet, you are definitely exercising your vagus nerve because the essential fats that your body cannot produce itself, they are found primarily in fish and are necessary for normal electrical functioning of your brain and nervous system. So I've always told my kids growing up, eat all the fish you can. And I've always fed tuna to all my dogs too. And all my dogs have always been intelligent. So I do know that fish oil is one of the best things for your vagus nerve. Also, kombucha or probiotics. And if nobody knew this, if you don't like pumpkin seeds, you should actually incorporate them or a few of them into your diet each week because pumpkin seeds actually have a probiotic that is only in pumpkin seeds and no other source in the world can you get that probiotic but from pumpkin seeds. Now, I don't know the exact name of it, but check it out. Google it. You can find it. It's becoming increasingly clear to researchers that gut bacteria improves brain function by affecting the vagus nerve. And in one study, animals were given the probiotic Lactobacillus rhamnosus, and researchers found that positive changes to the GABA receptors in the brain, in which I don't know if any of you guys have studied. GABA is one of the chemical receptors in your brain that makes you feel good, makes you happy, and makes you, cuts down on stress. It's a reduction in stress hormones and less depression and anxiety, behavior issues. The researchers also concluded that these beneficial changes between the gut and the brain were facilitated by the vagus nerve. When the vagus nerve was removed in other mice, the addition to Lactobacillus rhamnosus to their digestive system failed to reduce anxiety, stress, and improve mood. Because, if you take away the vagus nerve, you're not going to be able to regulate a lot of things. Another study found that, the probiotic Bifidobacterium longeum normalized anxiety behavior in mice. So that's pretty wild, right? Other things that can exercise your vagal nerve that I've used all my life is the exposure to cold temperatures. If you ever watch any motivational speakers and they talk about Mark Zuckerberg, Joe Rogan, huge gurus in the world that are doing big things, and they're not just talking, you can't just talk about being different and changing and then going around acting a certain way that portrays a whole different story than what you're saying, because cold exposure actually, it's I shouldn't say cold exposure, acute cold exposure. It's been shown to activate the vagus nerve, and I can't spell that. Oh, hold on a second. Cholinergic neurons through vagus nerve pathways, and that's a hard one. It's cholinergic neurons, whatever that means. So I haven't looked that up, but researchers have also found that exposing yourself to cold on a regular basis can lower systematic fight or flight response and increase parasympathetic activity through the vagus nerve. And this is an older book that I'm going to be reading to you, but there's a parasympathetic vagus nerve, and that's a part of the vagus nerve is the parasympathetic part. Taking cold showers can go, you can go outside and take a cold shower with minimal clothes on. You could and that's why some people do the ice bath or the polar plunge, stuff like that. Another way you could exercise your vagus nerve is to deep and slow breathing. So whenever you're in a stressful situation, if you focus on your breathing and you do and then breathe out, and you hold, so you breathe in halfway, then you breathe in all the way, you hold it for a second or two, and then you let it out. That's actually an isometric breath, and so your mind is forced to think that you're getting ready to go to sleep. So even in the middle of a fight or an argument, if you breathe in halfway, then breathe in fully, hold it for 1 to 3 seconds, and then let out, and continue to do that, your whole entire mind just focuses on the breath and your subconscious. Like, it'll change any direction of any kind of negativity around you. It'll even change positive, stuff going on around you and make you think less about the positivity of it. So deep and slow breathing is another way to stimulate your vagus nerve. It's been shown to reduce anxiety and increase the parasympathetic system by activating the vagus nerve. Most people take about 10 to 14 breaths each minute. Taking about 6 breaths over the course of a minute is a great way to relieve stress. You should breathe in deeply from your diaphragm. Like when you sing, they say you should sing from your diaphragm. And that's another one that actually activates your vagus nerve is singing as well. When you do this, I'm still on deep and slow breathing, y'all. So when you do this, your stomach should expand outward. Your exhale should be long and slow. This is key to stimulating the vagus nerve and reaching a state of relaxation. And like I told you before, singing, humming, chanting, and gargling even is a way that you can stimulate the vagus nerve. It's connected to your vocal cords and the muscles at the back of your throat. Singing, humming, chanting, and gargling can activate these muscles and stimulate your vagus nerve, and has shown to increase heart rate, variability, and vagal tone. So, that's some pretty important stuff, you guys. So, and you should gargle. If you can't do singing or humming or chanting, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning or at night, gargle water, I often gargle water before, swallowing it. This is discussed more in the book. Oh yeah, in the book, Why Isn't My Brain Working? So if you guys want to check that book out too, that's by Dr. Dantis Karzanians. And I would recommend you check that book out too. And like I said, probiotics it helps your vagus nerve to be activated to make you less stressed. And obviously meditation's a huge one. Meditation is my favorite relaxation technique, and it can be it can be used to stimulate the vagus nerve and increase vagal tone. Research shows that meditation increases vagal tone and positive emotions and promotes feelings of goodwill towards yourself and towards others. Another study found that meditation reduces sympathetic fight or flight activity, which I always say this in all my other podcasts. Your fight or flight in your brain is controlled by your amygdala, in which the amygdala is controlled by your medial lobes. And the medial lobes are responsible for mindfulness, letting you know, hey, you're okay, nothing's going to happen. That's just a person running by. They're not running over here to stab you or injure you. So another great one is exercise. I've already discussed how exercise can increase your brain's growth hormone, supports your brain's mitochondria, and helps reverse cognitive decline. And that goes for many people. Many people suffer ailments because they are in these systems in the world that put exercise and normal animal activities to the side when you can't do that. You can't just sit in front of a TV slamming, sugar foods all damn day and think that everything's going to be okay. You do that long enough, it's going to take a toll, and it's going to cause cancers to come out, heart attacks, and other things. Because in the world, anything that's fake sugars, like dextrose, monocrose, sucrose, those are all pesticides. And I know nobody wants to believe that, but unfortunately in 1970, a farmer was mixing together 3 different types of pesticides. The wind blew, and he was right there. It blew so hard that it blew it into his mouth. He ran inside the house, told his wife, "You wouldn't believe this, those pesticides I was mixing together out there, they were sweet like sugar. How can sugar ward off bugs?" And in reality, back in the 70s, people had no idea that pesticides had a half-life. Or like when you drink that energy drink, it has a half-life. When you put that alcohol in your system, it has a half-life. And that's what makes people addicted to drugs. That's what makes people say, "Oh, I don't ever want to drink again." And then at the end of the week, they're right back at the bar drinking again, because the half-life is still in your system and it's calling you back, and it's not ever going to let you go. So anyways, they were putting pesticides all over the place in the 70s, and they have so much pesticidic half-lives in the ground of crops that we are forever going to be having food with pesticides in it. There's no way around it. The government ain't going to tell you that. You got to find all this stuff out by doing research and reading and finding out the truth, and actually getting yourself educated. Because once he mixed those 3 pesticides together, he pretty much called the EPA or the Agricultural Company of Iowa or wherever it was, Indiana, I can't remember, but they came out with all these scientists, confiscated all this stuff, and then in the 80s, we seen Diet Pepsi, they came out with Equal. Then at the end of the 80s, there was a huge recall of all those sugars because they did not take the time to figure out that those pesticides were pesticides and they will kill people. And they turned it into sugar and started selling it to the American people as Diet Pepsi. And people started falling down dead. They had huge recalls of Diet Pepsi back in the late 80s and huge lawsuits. But anyways, another way to exercise your vagal nerve is massage. Research shows that massages can stimulate the vagus nerve and increase vagal activity and vagal tone. You guys, my vagal tone, it's strong. Now, I have exercised my vagal nerve all my life. I'm that type of person. I've always believed that everything you put in your mouth is medicine. The vagus nerve can also be stimulated by massaging several specific areas of the body. Foot massages, reflexology have been shown to increase vagal modulation and heart rate variability and decrease the fight or flight systematic response. Messaging the carotid sinus, an area located near the right side of your throat, can also stimulate the vagus nerve and reduce seizures. I personally get a massage from a registered massage therapist every couple months just for this reason. And another one that'll always works with, and I find this to be truthful in early development, like home life, things like that. A way my vagal nerve was stimulated as a kid was through laughter and socializing with friends and my family. I've already discussed how socializing and laughter can reduce your body's main stress hormone in other podcasts that I've done. And now and now they are like, they like doing, I lost my spot, you guys. I am so sorry. But it's just socializing and laughter stimulates the vagus nerve as well. And the conclusion of all this is, you don't have to be controlled by your body and mind. You have the power to tell them what to do by stimulating the vagus nerve. You can send messages to your body that it's time to relax and de-stress, which leads to long-term improvements in mood, well-being, and resilience. And resilience is important in the workspace and in the home life, because if you're not resilient, anything and everything will knock you off your square, and you just can't have that in life. Life's too hard. Increasing my vagal tone has allowed me to overcome anxiety and depression and better manage them when they arise. Overall, I hope you can implement some of this stuff into your life, and maybe you'll learn how to become better people and better well-coped. And now back to The Mind and Brain by Alfred Binet. Thank you guys for listening. This is the Only You podcast, and this is chapter 1, the distinction between cognition and its object. After having thus studied matter and reduced it to sensations, we shall apply the same method of analysis to mind and inquire whether mind possesses any characteristic which allows it to be distinguished from matter. Before going any further, let me clear up an ambiguity. All the first part of this work has been devoted to the study of what is known to us in and by sensation, and have taken upon myself, without advancing any kind of justifying reason, to call that which is known to us by this method by the name of matter, thus losing sight of the fact that matter only exists by contradiction and opposition to mind, and that if mind did not exist, neither would matter. I have thus appeared to prejudge the question to be resolved. The whole of this terminology must now be considered as having simply a conventional value. I agree to that. The mind and the brain, and must be set aside for the present. These are the precise terms in which this question presents itself to the mind. A part of the knowable consists in sensations. We must therefore, without troubling to style this aggregate of sensations matter rather than mind, make an analysis of the phenomena known by the name known by the name of mind, and see whether they differ from the preceding ones. Let us therefore make an inventory of mind by the process of enumeration we find quoted as psychological phenomena. The sensations, the perceptions, the ideas, the recollections, the reasoning, the emotions, the desires, the imaginations, and the acts of attention and of will. These appear to be at the first glance the elements of mind, but on reflection one perceives that these elements belong to two distinct categories, of which it is easy to recognize the duality, although in fact and in reality these two elements are constantly combined. The first of these elements may receive the generic name of objects of cognition. My bad. Sorry, you guys. Sometimes I get ahead of myself when I'm reading. That's why I kind of misspeak. And I'm like, oh, I lost my place. I didn't lose my place. I'm just getting ahead of myself when I'm reading. Sorry about that, everybody. Are objects known, and the second of acts of cognition. Here are a few examples of concrete facts which only require a rapid analysis to make their double nature plain. In a sensation which we feel are two things, a particular state or an object which one knows, and the act of knowing it, of feeling it, of taking cognizance of it. In other words, every sensation compromises an impression and a cognition. True. In a recollection, there is, in like manner, a certain image of the past and the fact consisting in the taking cognizance of this image. It is, in other terms, the distinction between the intelligence and the object. Similarly, all reasoning has an object. there must be matter on which to reason, whether this matter be supplied by the facts or the ideas. Again, a desire, a violation, an act of reflection has need of a point of application. One does not will in the air, one wills something. One does not reflect in the void, one reflects over a fact or over some difficulty. Completely true. We may then provisionally distinguish in an inventory of the mind something which is perceived, understood, desired, or willed, and beyond that, the fact of perceiving, of understanding, or desiring, or of willing. To illustrate the distinction by an example, I shall say that an analogous separation can be affected in an act of vision by showing that the act of vision, which is a concentration of a concrete operation, compromises two distinct elements. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast. It's your boy Lo Jackson, and today we're doing a great read for y'all. It's called The Mind and the Brain by Alfred Binet, and I give this book a 5-star review because there is so much stuff in here to unpack. It's wild, honestly. I'm reading you a little bit of the stuff I thought was kind of interesting, and maybe you guys don't follow along, and hopefully you will, but I found some of this stuff to be just downright interesting. Definition of sensation. I want to share this with you. When making the analysis of matter, we admitted two propositions. First, that sensation and the tertium quid, which is a Latin word, which is interposed between the extentient of our sensory nerves and ourselves. Secondly, the aggregate of our sensations is all we can know of the outer world, so that it is correct to define this last as the collection of our present, past, and possible sensations. It is not claimed that the outer world is nothing else than this, but it is claimed with good reason that the outer world is nothing else to us. It would be possible to draw from the above considerations a clear definition of sensation, and especially it would be possible to decide henceforth with the foregoing whether sensations is a physical or a mental phenomenon. And this book has to do with the vagus nerve, but like I said, this book was written over 100 years ago, and I'm reading this to you, this part, because it's talking about the vagus nerve, but this dude the vagus nerve hasn't even been dissected and out there yet to let everybody know that we know what it is. You know what I mean? Because technology wasn't that advanced back then. Where was I? And especially it would be possible to decide henceforth from the foregoing whether sensation is a physical or a mental phenomenon, and whether it belongs to matter or to mind. This is the important point, the one which we now state and which we will endeavor forever. To make the question clearer, we will begin it fresh, as if it were now, and as if it were facts hitherto analyzed did not already prejudge the solution. Let us begin by giving definition of sensation from the point of view of experimental psychology. Sensation, then, is the phenomenon which is produced and which one expresses when an exient has just acted on one of our organs of sense. The phenomena is therefore composed of two parts: an action exercised from outside by some body or other on our nervous substance, and then the fact of feeling this action. This fact of feeling, this state of consciousness, is necessary to constitute sensation. When it does not exist, it is preferably to give the phenomenon another name. Otherwise, the fault is committed of mixing up separate facts. Psychologists have on this point some faults of terminology with which to reproach themselves, for they have employed the word sensibility with too little of critical spirit. Sensibility being capacity for sensation presupposes, like sensation itself, consciousness. It has therefore been wrong in psychology to speak of the sensibility of the issue and organs which, like the vegetable tissues or the animal organs of vegetable life, properly speak, feel nothing, but react by rapid or slow movements to the excitements they are made to receive. You guys, thank you for listening to the Only You podcast. And today I'm doing the book called The Mind and Brain by Alfred Binet. Thank you so much for following me. Thank you for sharing. Thank you guys for tuning into the Only You podcast. Alfred Binet was actually born on July 8, 1857, and he had the unfortunate death on October 18, 1911. He was born Alfredo Binet, was a French psychologist who invented the first practical IQ test, the Binet-Simon test. In 1904, the French Ministry of Education asked psychologist Alfred Binet to devise a method that would determine which students did not learn effectively from regular classroom instruction so they could be given remedial work. Along with his collaborator, Theodore Simon Binet, published revisions of his test in 1908 and 1911, the last of which appeared just before his death. He actually is one of many psychologists of that time that had a lot of actually great ideas. In his education and early career, Binet was born in Nice, which is a part of the kingdom of Sardinia. He was born in the town of Nice. Is that not cool? Until its annexation by the Second French Empire in 1860 and ensuing policy of Francization. Binet attended law school in Paris and received his degree in 1878. He also studied psychology at the Sorbonne, which is a school. Sorbonne is pretty much is the University of Paris. I think most people know that. He also studied psychology there, and his first formal position was a researcher at a neurological clinic in Paris from 1883 to 1889. I thought that was pretty cool. Binet went on to being a researcher and associate director of the Laboratory of Experimental Psychology at the Sorbonne from 1891 to 1894. And in 1894, he was promoted to being the director of the laboratory until 1911, which, obviously that was the year that he had passed away, unfortunately. Jonathan Stuart Mill, who believed that the operations of intelligence could be explained by the laws of associationism. Binet eventually realized the limitations of this theory, but Mill's ideas continued to influence his work. And in 1883, years of unaccompanied study ended when Binet was introduced to Charles Fourier, who introduced him to Jean-Martin Charcot, and the director of a clinical called Les Salpêtriers in Paris. Charcot became his mentor, and in turn, Binet accepted a position at the clinic, working in his neurological laboratory, which that's kind of awesome. They had neurological laboratories back then, and they were into hypnotism and all kinds of stuff. Kind of cool. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast, and this has been a great book to read. I mean, a lot of the terminologies and words in here are mind-blowing just for the fact that it was over 100 years ago this book was written. But not a lot has changed. But then again, when you read this book, The Mind and the Brain by Alfred Binet, you can actually see from then to now all the different things that have come about that he didn't even know about. But he talked about them, but they weren't actually deemed, psychology terms. Or I think that's pretty cool. I mean, Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for following me. Thank you for sharing me. I want you guys to have coping skills. I want you guys to be great people. I want to be a good person. I use these coping skills myself, and I listen to my own podcast over and over to try to learn things that I didn't know. Or, coping skills, they can include such things as noticing tension and taking deep breaths, catching negative thoughts and replacing them with healthy ones, setting and maintaining appropriate healthy boundaries between you and others, which a lot of people don't know about boundaries. You don't just put your hands on people, or you just don't say things anytime you feel like it. Relaxing with aromatherapy, and I'm huge on aromatherapy. I'm huge on botched flower therapy. If you don't know about botched flower therapy, look it up. It's something to do with, obviously, smelling therapy, aromatherapy. So you guys, coping mechanisms can be many different things, sleeping the right amount of time, finding things that make you grateful, creating little moments of joy each day. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope to God that this podcast help each and every one of you be better people. I want to do a podcast soon on animals. I want to find a great book, because there's so many things about animals in the psychological world that help human beings be better people and become understanding, caring, and appreciative. I don't know if anybody knows this, but in Egypt, all the pharaohs always had like a pointy-eared cat next to them in all the hieroglyphics that you see. Not a lot of people know this, but a cat's purr has a frequency that can calm the human heart. So when, the slaves came to the pharaoh with their, problems or whatever, the pharaoh, if it was something very serious and he wasn't sure what to do, in the writings in Egypt, scholars have figured out that the pharaoh would grab the cat instantly, close his eyes, and start petting. The louder the purr became, the calmer the pharaoh became. And this would go on for 20, 30 minutes before the pharaoh decided what he was going to do. He would sit there closed-eyed, cat in his lap, and just petting away, and the purr would get louder and louder and louder till the whole room was silent. And if you spoke, I'm sure you were probably beheaded or something crazy. Don't quote me on that, but, back then things, when you interrupted the pharaoh, that was a no-no. So once his heart frequency was in tune with the cat purr, it calmed the pharaoh's whole entire nervous system. So his vagus nerve was totally calm from the purring of the heart. In reality, the purr enters your heart frequency, and it calms your heart and your lungs down, your vagus nerve. Thank you guys for listening. This is the Only You podcast. Y'all need to get a cat. Start petting it.